This is my review of the Beach Boys album today. It was released in 1965, produced by Brian Wilson. I don't really remember when I got this album exactly. Probably would have been like 2009, 2010. Like most of these Beach Boys albums, I couldn't find them in the store back when I was looking for them. Like the store only ever had greatest hits albums, so I always had to order these off Amazon. And I don't know, it's less memorable to me when I get something in the mail versus like going and buying it. So don't really remember getting it, but it's always been kind of one of my favorites of theirs. I feel like this is maybe their first album that doesn't really have any. Okay, so there's like one song on here that I'll get to that's like not really a song, but to me that's really the only thing on this album that's like filler-ish, which probably makes it the first Beach Boys album, like chronologically, that's like that. Although, I mean, I'll argue that Surfer Girl doesn't really have any filler on it, because at least by my definition it doesn't. Because to me it has like some songs that are lesser, but I still wouldn't necessarily describe them as filler, which I know some people would, but I think that, it's a matter of opinion like all of this. So, anyway, this album though, I mean, I'm not really like, I've read some books on them and stuff, but I wouldn't claim to be an expert on the Beach Boys history. But I think, like, from what I can remember, and it's been a long time since I read a lot of this stuff, but around this time is when Brian, stopped touring with the group and started staying back in the studio more and working on tracks while the band was out on tour, and started, doing stuff like that. So this album does have kind of it starts to get into that like Pet Sounds era, where like the Wrecking Crew's kind of taking over and doing more of the instrumental playing, and the band's more just singing. But there are still tracks on this where the band plays, from what I understand. At least that's what the books and stuff that I've read say. So as far as the tracks and the album itself go, the album starts with "Do You Want to Dance," which is a cover song. It's a Dennis vocal, which I think is the first time he's had the opening vocal. I think it's a great opener, just a really good cover. I'm pretty sure this is one of the tracks that uses mainly like the Wrecking Crew on it, and you can kind of tell, because at this point, like, I don't know, Brian's productions just keeps getting kind of more like sophisticated as he goes on, at least up around this time. I don't know, it's just a really cool song. I remember it was on the Greatest Hits CD I got, actually. It was the only Dennis vocal on the Greatest Hits CD I got, but kind of got me into his voice. I don't know, I guess I like his voice a lot. The second track, "Good to My Baby," song by Brian and Mike. I think it's a really cool, especially like the musically, just like what's going on. I don't know, it sounds so cool the way Brian's starting to put like all the instruments together and just what he's doing. But yeah, it's just another really good song. The third song, "Don't Hurt My Little Sister," another Brian and Mike song. Not really one of my favorites. I feel like it's a little kind of like weaker lyrically, although the vocals, which kind of, this almost goes without saying on most Beach Boys albums, but the vocals are great. But just maybe not like, I don't know, I've always found like the lyrics a little weak on it, which I'm not really like a lyrics person, but still a great song. Musically, what's going on sounds really cool, but just never been like my favorite song on the album. The fourth song, "When I Grow Up to Be a Man," another Brian and Mike song. This one, actually, from what I understand, is the band playing by themselves. And this song I really love, mainly because it's got like a lot of harpsichord in it, which I'm pretty sure is Brian playing. And I love the harpsichord, and I think it should be used more often. It's kind of like, I'm like, why did that instrument have to go out of favor? But anyway, ranting about the harpsichord. But yeah, it's a great song, and I think that the performance on it is really good by the band at this point. The fifth song, "Help Me Rhonda," another Brian and Mike song. It's not the "Help Me Rhonda" that most people are familiar with. This is a different album version that's kind of weaker than the single version, and that version actually appears on the next album, so we'll talk about it more next week. But this version, it's not bad. Can't remember if I mentioned it already, but Al Jardine sings lead on this track. Because I like to mention who sings on the track just because they switch up the lead vocalist so often. But some of their later stuff where it gets more confusing, I feel like. I don't know, this version. Honestly, I would need to listen to. I haven't listened to the single version in a while, so I know I like that version better than this version, and it's really kind of. But it's like hard for me to explain why, because when this version on, like it's fine, and I don't really mind it that much. I think that it's got some like weird. There seem to be some weird like volume things with it, like where it gets kind of like. If you're listening to it with headphones on, like it'll be kind of quiet, and then it'll be like really loud, and then it'll be kind of quiet. So it's kind of I don't know, the production on this version of Help Me Around is kind of weird, but then they went and redid it and kind of fixed all those problems. But still, it doesn't like take the album down for me any, having this version here. The sixth song, Dance Dance Dance, was by Brian, Carl, and Mike. Another one I really like. Think it's got some really cool vocals. They've got like, pretty sure there's some 12-string guitars going on there because it sounds really jangly, and I love the 12-string. It's got a pretty cool guitar solo on it too, I think. So it's always been one of the songs that I really liked. And then, so on the second half of the record too, there's this record's kind of interesting. And like the first half's more kind of like up-tempo songs, and then the second half's like mainly ballads. So this kind of begins the ballad part with the seventh song, Please Let Me Wonder, which is another Brian and Mike song. And these songs I couldn't think of as much to really say about them. Like I really like all of them, and it's mainly just, I don't know, they're just these like kind of pretty ballads with just really great vocals from the group. And this one, in particular, Brian gives a really great vocal. I really like the song, but I couldn't really think of much to say about it other than that. The eighth song, I'm So Young, a cover. Another one, just really pretty ballad with just amazing vocals from these guys. I always say I don't, to me at least, there's no like vocal group that's ever been better than these guys in their prime. And this album, I think, is definitely like during that time. The ninth song, Kiss Me Baby, another Brian and Mike song, another kind of slow song with just crazy good vocals. And that's, like I said, these songs are all kind of just these like similar type of ballads, so I couldn't really think of that much to say, but I do like really love all these songs. Can't remember which one I was on because my notes are so similar and the songs are so similar that I can't remember which one I mentioned. I think I was on 10, so She Knows Me Too Well, 10, another Brian and Mike song, another pretty ballad with a great Brian vocal. Is Brian singing, I also kind of want to stop, I guess, and mention that, because Brian's voice, like I've said before earlier, like it definitely changes. In the 70s, his voice gets rougher, and he also like disappears kind of for a while from, he like stopped doing music and would just kind of like pop up on albums like less and more sometimes later. So this album's cool because you get a lot of just really good like Brian Wilson in his prime voice vocals. Brian he had a crazy good voice, and this album just has that displayed like everywhere. So then the 11th song, which I kind of consider the last song on the album because the 12th song isn't a song, is In the Back of My Mind, and it's another Brian and Mike song. This is another one where Dennis gets the lead. I think Brian said that Dennis got to do the closing and opening songs in the album sort of because he didn't think that he got to sing enough usually. At least that's what I was reading in the notes today, which I also thought was kind of interesting because they didn't give Carl any vocals on this album. It's like, and he'd only had like, I think think maybe he'd only had like a co-lead singer. I can't remember if he sang on any up till any of the songs in the albums before this, but I was kind of surprised that they were like, "Wow, just give Dennis more songs, but not Carl." But I mean, I like that. Not that I mean, I love Carl's voice too, but once again, I'm ranting. But yeah, 10. She does to me. Sorry, it was a super long day at work. I'm filming this after work, and I was like half asleep. Yeah, the 10th song, another ballad. Dennis sings lead on it. Some people I've heard kind of criticize his voice on it as like a little shaky and uneven. And yeah, compared to the other guys, I think Dennis did have he definitely had the technically weakest voice, and especially later on, there's like substance abuse and stuff. Like he would lose a lot of his voice, like Brian kind of also did. So their voices kind of change as it goes along, but this is still kind of the early sounding Dennis, and I think he does a really good job though. I think that Dennis had the most like emotional voice of the group. Like he was the one I think that sounds the most like he believes what he's singing. So I think that kind of plays into why I like his voice so much. But I really like the way he sings the track. I think it's a really good song. I think especially like instrumentally and production wise, it sounds almost like it could fit on Pet Sounds. Probably more than anything else on this album, at least in my opinion. And definitely kind of like shows the way in that direction a little bit. And if they had ended the album there, it would be perfect. But they had to throw in one of these those little comedy sketch things that they do. This one's called Bull Session with Big Daddy. I listened to it earlier when I was taking these notes, and honestly, I don't even remember it. I think I've listened to it maybe like twice before this. So this is probably the third time I've listened to it, and it's they did these things probably to just fill up a little bit of space, which I cut them more slack on, I think, than most people, because I don't know, the pace that Capitol was making them put out records was kind of ridiculous. And when you only have, the time they only had one main songwriter, I guess, well, you can kind of count, I mean, Mike co-writes most of the stuff, but it's lyrics, I guess, so, but I don't know, when you got like one writer and you got to do all this stuff and they're making you put out like 3 albums a year, I think it's understandable to have some stuff like this, because I think it was kind of unfair that they had to do that. But so sorry, once again I'm ranting, but I'm gonna cut the album a little slack, give it a 5 out of 5, even though, like I said, that last track, the whole like talking comedy thing is pretty much worthless, and I always skip it. The rest of the album is I think perfect, really. Even with the Help Me Rhonda, that it doesn't bother me any, honestly, that it's repeated, because that one's kind of interesting, and it's like different enough from the other one to be interesting. And it's really not that bad of a version. It's just not quite as good as the other version. So yeah, Beach Boys Today, I'd give it a 5 out of 5. Say probably, I don't know, I think that like if you're going from like Pet Sounds, this is like maybe like the closest thing that they did to that, other than like the Smile Sessions. Just a bunch of really great songs from them. So Beach Boys Today, 5 out of 5.